So as Jill said, I'm from SoilThrive together with Robin, and we do a variety of things. So I'm going to do an introduction, the basics of the microbiome, the work of Dr. David C. Johnson, the Johnson Sioux bioreactors, our locally made SoilThrive microbes. Then we're going to talk about a regenerative system for Hawaii, and then an afternoon demonstration of non-toxic products. So I do have a degree in agronomy, but that was done about a century ago. I think a lot of things have changed since then. And I got interested in this work because of climate change. I was really concerned about climate change, so I started studying soils. So in the human microbiome, we are very dependent on microbes. We have 10 trillion human cells and 90 trillion microbial cells. So our microbial cells do for us what the microbiome does for the plant. So what does this old growth Hawaiian forest have in common with this Hawaiian regenerative farm? They both have very good biosystem diversity, and they both have a really biodiverse microbiome. So when we talk about the microbiome, we usually talk about the mycorrhizae fungi, and it's a fascinating system. So this is a pine tree, obviously, but the yellow is where the root is. The rest of that is all mycorrhizae fungi. So mycorrhizae fungi are dependent on its host plant. It dies without that plant's sugar. So it does everything the plant asks, and there's actually a communication between the plant and the mycorrhizae fungi. So they've measured this stuff, and in a single cubic yard, there's 12,000 linear miles of mycorrhizae fungi, hyphae. So it goes into every nook and cranny. So if there is a drought, it actually can go out and recover nanoparticles of water. That's why it's so important when you don't have enough rain. This is how the hyphae attaches to a root cell. More mycorrhizae fungi. So the intelligence is that the plant can actually say, you know, today guys, I need nitrates. And the mycorrhizae fungi will go out and get nitrates, but at a cost. It says, you gotta give me sugar and I'll bring you the nitrates. And it brings it back. The next day it says, okay, today I need some phosphorus. And the mycorrhizae fungi says, well, that's gonna cost you because I got to deal with the bacteria to get the phosphorus, because only the bacteria can extract the phosphorus from the soil particles. We all know that when we put on chemical phosphates, they tie up into the soil very quickly, and it takes biology to extract it. It takes microbes to extract, or it takes bacteria to extract it. You can see the surface area increase from a root to the mycorrhizae fungi, how much more it can absorb. And for every 1% organic matter that you can increase your soil, the soil holds an extra 20,000 gallons per acre for every 1%. And when we talk about organic matter, we're not talking about decomposed biomass. We're talking about mycorrhizae fungi that has been given sugars, and take those sugars and make what's called glomalin. And the glomalin is a very sticky substance, and it sticks soil together. When you stick soil together, you make voids. When you have voids, then you have air pockets and you have water can infiltrate. But also the fact that it is carbon, and that's where climate change comes in. The glomalin is the carbon in the soil. That's how the plant is able to take CO2 out of the atmosphere, convert it into something that remains in the soil. It doesn't break down like biomass. So biomass is called labile carbon and not stable carbon. I'm just a big fan of Mother Nature and how intelligent it is. So those are actual droplets of plant sugar. They're called exudates. And the plant, that's how it feeds not only the mycorrhizae fungi, but all of the bacteria in the soil. So it will feed the mycorrhizae fungi directly, and and it will just also shoot it down into the soil for the entire microbiome. And this is a little bit difficult. It took me a long time to understand this. But in the upper left-hand corner, that's a fungal to bacteria ratio that's very low, which means the soil is very poor. And when the soil is very poor, the plant takes 97% of its sugar and gives it to the soil. So the plant, in its intelligence, knows that it's got to make the soil healthy before it can take its sugars for its own growth. So the more that we can make the soil healthy, the more the plant can use its own sugars. So in the bottom right, you see when you've got a really healthy soil, a fungal to bacteria ratio of 3.68, the plant then can use 56% of its own sugars. That's an intelligence that is hard to understand, that the plant understands that unless it makes its living space good for itself and its progeny and for the future, that it's not going to go so well. So it takes its effort to do that. I learned in college that nature is always going for a climax. I thought that was kind of funny. But what it means is that whatever happens, even if there's an oil spill, nature's going to come in there, figure out what to do to fix that, and even if it takes 1,000,000 years, she's going to an old growth forest, wherever she is, or a savanna. And we know that, like we have volcanoes, what happens, the lichens come, the mosses come, the grasses come, and eventually we have an old growth koa and sandalwood forest. That's the ultimate forest in Hawaii. So nature is always thinking in that direction, no matter where she starts. It doesn't matter what you've done to her, she's going to pick herself up and go in that direction. And that's why we have weeds. We have weeds to bring up the nutrients that are needed in that particular soil profile. And the classic one, of course, is dandelions. And we don't have dandelions here, but it's classic because they go down, they break up the subsoil with their taproot, and they bring up calcium. That's their function. So they're doing something in grasses and making people upset. And if people would just put a little calcium on the soil, the dandelions wouldn't even be there. They wouldn't germinate because they're not needed. This is a rhizosheath that's just showing you how microbes cluster around a root. This is a barley plant, and on the right you can see that the plant doesn't even have a leaf yet and already has a rhizosheath around its roots because it's growing in a barley field that uses only microbes. This is a famous farm in Australia, 20,000 acres of barley and sheep. And all they use are microbes and micronutrients. So, yeah. And they double the yield of their county with only microbes. And they've been around for a long time. They've been at this for a long time. This is a root which has been grown with synthetic nitrogen. Synthetic nitrogen is just death to microbes. I'm sure you'd rather have the turf on the left. So the work of Dr. David C. Johnson, who's a microbiologist from New Mexico State. He's an unusual guy because for the first part of his career, until he was 50, he was a contractor in Alaska. He didn't go to college, he was a contractor in Alaska. And at the age 50, he says, maybe I ought to go to college. So he goes to college, gets his undergrad, gets his master's, gets his PhD in microbiology, the most difficult subject you can study. And in so doing, he got a SARS grant. And the SARS grant said, you got to deal with this manure from these farms, you got to figure out how to compost it. So he and his partner came up with this system, which is a static composter that's totally always aerated and always moist. And we'll get into that more this afternoon. But in making it, he found that it's not really compost, it's an inoculant because the microbes are so phenomenal in this system. So at 4 weeks, these are the number of species in that, we'll call it compost at 4 weeks. 23 major species. At 22 weeks is 57. So the biodiversity increases over time. And at a year, it's up to 99 of the predominant species. Now what's important about this is it doesn't matter what he puts in there. It doesn't matter if he uses grass clippings or alfalfa hay or manure or whatever he uses, it always goes through this same system. It always ends up in at the same place because it's a natural system. He doesn't do anything to manipulate it. So it comes to where it can now do what's called quorum sensing. And that's an important new concept in agriculture and also in human health, quorum sensing. So if your body wants to make a protein, your microbes go out there and they figure out if you have enough amino acids or the right ones. And if you do, it makes it. If not, it just puts it away and says next. So rapid but they do that through quorum sensing. So with quorum sensing, bacteria can do things that they cannot do alone or in small groups. They have to have what's called a quorum, just like if we were to vote on something here, we'd want a quorum of at least 60%, say that would be our quorum as we determined it. So microbes are the same way. So these are all the different microbes, 193 species that they were the most predominant species in this brew, we'll call it. And of them, 21 are nitrogen fixing. Not just the old-fashioned kind where we all know about legumes, but these are also nitrogen here with the F that take it straight out of the atmosphere because we know our atmosphere is 78% nitrogen gas. So that takes the nitrogen right out of the air and converts it into something the plant can use. 13 of them are nitrogen cycling in the soil. 25 of them are carbon cycling microbes. 14 of them are metal oxidation. So these are the microbes that can take nutrients off of the parent material of the soil and make them available to the plant. And very importantly, 10 of them are phosphorus solubilizing. Those are the ones that can take the phosphorus off of the soil material. I don't know if you know this, but the world is running out of elemental phosphorus. Soft rock phosphate the mines are becoming empty. So it's really important that now we can mine the phosphorus that's already in the soil that we've put there from fertilization over the years. They figure in an agricultural system there are 40 years of phosphate in that soil. And you can see on the internet people that use this system that use absolutely zero phosphorus in their fertilization system. So it's a big money saver on a large farm. Then there are too many to mention that are there to break down pesticides, herbicides, old plastic, any sort of toxin in the soil. There's a lot of microbes that are meant to do that from this system. And then 10 that are phytohormone producers. And then 6 of the most predominant ones are in that quorum sensing group that organize everybody else. So this is in what they call the Johnson-Su bioreactor. When Davis started testing it, the first year he started doing small plot studies, and he found up here on the right, you see the control has 3 inches of topsoil. And after 3.5 years, it had 7 inches of topsoil. In his first trials, from the control in the first year, he did 5 times as much production in the terms of dry biomass per square meter. By year 7, he was doing 22 times as much biomass as the control, 22 times over 7 years in that year, not over the 7 years. So here, what's important here is he's showing you that this crop is actually sequestering nitrogen for the next crop. It's putting nitrogen in the soil that will be used by the next crop. And why this is important, why I put it in here, is that an old growth forest produces 2,200 grams of dry biomass per square meter per year. And this system, this was just in the winter cover crop, produced that much. In a full year, it produced 45% more than a mature forest does in a year. And you see that here on the right. In the full year, they produce 386 grams dry biomass per square meter, as opposed to 2,200 in a old growth forest. So it's phenomenal. So what does SoilThrive do with our micronutrients? We started making them about 3 years ago, and we made a lot of mistakes. A lot of mistakes. But we learned, we kept going and we learned. So you have to put aeration tubes in for a couple of days, and then you pull them out because the fungus come in there and make a tube, and there's a cylinder there. Now we make them down at the sunflower farm, and we found a really fast way to do it, or at least much faster. And we've got about 25 of these bioreactors. Each of them takes a ton of material. We've got them inside, outside, different shapes, different inputs. We even used IBC totes. We did this to see what the best way was to do it in Hawaii, because we intend to teach it to anybody that wants to learn. We would like to see every farmer to have their own bioreactor, because this is game changing to have these sorts of microbes at your fingertips whenever you want them. So it's fun to see the mushrooms come and go. And then we test it with something called the microbiometer. I don't know if anybody's ever heard of that yet, but it's something you can read your soil quality on your iPhone. Another important thing about this type of compost or inoculant is that if they run out of food, fungi become spores and bacteria become cysts. It's important to have that biodiversity in your inoculant. And one of the most important uses for this sort of inoculant is planting trees. And our inoculant is just now getting mature, and we hope to connect with all the different tree planting groups, because if you put that on your roots just one time, then your trees are good for life, because they've got their community at their roots, and it's attached to their roots. And another use for this inoculant is if you have a tree that's sick, we've done this, and you inject it around the root. You inject the microbes all around the root, and that just takes care of the illness. It just gives the tree such a boost. So this is an interesting study. So a father died in 1985. He had quite a bit of land, and he left it to his two sons. And one son said, I'm just going to use chemicals. And the other guy said, nope, I'm going to go organic. So the guy on the left went organic, and this fence just separates the two farms. So this is in 2010, 25 years later. They go out and they dig a hole. This is on the brother's side that was lazy. That's what his soil looks like. Not that nice. Then they went back to the fence, went another 15 feet that way, so now we're 30 feet apart for the two holes. Dig another hole, looking a lot better, looking beautiful. 30 feet apart. The difference is management. So in terms of climate change, they sequestered 46, almost 47 tons of carbon per hectare more on the good side than the bad side. And since 2008, this soil has been sequestered at a rate of 37 tons of CO2 per hectare per year, which is as high as it gets. You'll never hear anybody ever claim more than that. And maybe even more importantly is that it made all of the nutrients available, as you can see in that chart. The difference between chemicals and biologicals, you can see in the root mass. Doesn't matter what you're growing, the root mass is always bigger. This is a dairy farm in New Zealand. The important thing here is it's on volcanic soils. When they started converting, that's what their soil looked like. For 3 years, they went without synthetic nitrogen, and they gained quite a bit of topsoil there. You can see in the child's hand. Remarkably, so Dr. Christine Jones is very famous for climate change and also for regenerative agriculture. She came and she said, you know what, you really have to use diverse microbes. You can't just stop using nitrogen. This was only 5 months after they started using microbes. Now, I know that doesn't look possible, and the farmer didn't think it was possible. He thought that you must have dug into an old root where he burned a tree. So he ran around the field and took 100 different samples. He said, it's everywhere. It was all like this. So what's a regenerative system for Hawaii, or what are we working on? So first, microbial inoculants, natural fertilizers. We've got some to show you today. Micronutrient deficiency correction, which you're probably already doing. And then non-toxic herbicides and pesticides that come from Germany. I mean, they're made in the US now, but they were originally developed in Germany, where they're really particular about their pesticides. We're working with the County of Maui out at the golf course on hole number 6. Every Monday morning at 5 o'clock, we go out there and we spray either microbes or calcium or a variety of things. Then we go over to the ball field and we spray over there. We've got a 6-month pilot with them. So it's really giving us an opportunity to try things. So this is on the ball field, and we were able to kill goosegrass without toxins. And we're just learning about all the weeds that are in turf. I'm sure you guys know them way better than we do, but it's interesting to try our different herbicides on them. We're working with Maui Nui Marine Research Council out at Maui Gold. And there it's super easy to spray microbes because they just take that big tank out there and zippo. This is Kahoma Village here in Lahaina. They lost 2 apartment buildings burned down in the middle of their development. 4 apartment buildings. Wow, that was, well, 2 huge, anyways, that's what happened. So we're working there, and this is before microbes and after microbes. We're also working on their whitefly problem on the hibiscus, and that was humbling, to say the least. We thought, oh, we can find something to kill those guys. Oh no, we had to wait until we could actually make the microbiome better, make the plants healthier, and then they could take care of the whiteflies themselves. And the whiteflies didn't want to come to them. We have successfully overcome the whitefly issue, but it took a while. And then that's Robin out spraying. No PPE equipment needed. Well, I would think that's important.
And that's an organic herbicide, so.
Yeah, that's an organic herbicide, yeah. And it's right next to kids playing. And it worked really well. We did a test spot there. It worked really, really well. Because one of our herbicides is, you spray it on and it's iron. It's a type of iron that the broadleaves uptake and it's toxic to them, and the plants love because then they get green. So it's really kind of a clever little thing. We'll show you this afternoon. I'm trying the take-all, the kill-all on sugarcane or cane grass. This was down at the Four Seasons about 2 years ago. This was take-all disease. And all we did is inject microbes twice, and then we watched. And that was about 2 months later. It was all gone. In fact, we couldn't even find where the really bad spot was. So this afternoon we're going to talk about a fertilizer that we are making. It's all natural. Although we had trouble with caking. My son and I had to come and run after that thing and hit it. But we're going to get a pellet machine so we can pelletize it. And that should take care of that problem, because it's really nice fertilizer. I called him at 5 in the morning, please come. He did. And then this is the final sand, you know, where you've got dirt, sidewalks, whatever. It works really well. So we have a chitin product that they tell us will take care of fairy ring and mole crickets at the same time that it also takes care of mosquitoes. If you spray it on a regular basis, you don't have to spray anything else for mosquitoes. This will take care of it. It's a chitin. How many people have actually heard of chitin products? Chitin? They've actually been around for 100 years, and they're made from seashells. They're made from oyster and shrimp shells. This particular company gets them from Iceland, so they're really pure, and they have a chemist that's phenomenal at making them. A lot of people make chitin products, but this particular company that we work with is really exceptional, and it works with nature. It doesn't kill things. It elicits the response that is natural in the soil. For example, if a cockroach dies out in the yard, you know, it's not there in a few days. And why isn't it there? Because of the chitinase, which is the enzyme that comes up and dissolves it. But that chitinase is stimulated by the fact that the cockroach is there. So this spray stimulates that response without having a dead cockroach. So it gets the chitinase, the enzyme that breaks things down. So why that's important is, like, if you have CRB, it's got eating parts that have chitin. They have chitin in them. That's why they're hard and they can bite. Chitinase breaks down chitin. So it actually dissolves their mouth parts and their little, yeah. It's ingenious. We have a grant to be coming around and teaching people about using the chitin products on the CRB, hoping that we can get ahead of that thing so it doesn't do to our palms what it's done to Oahu's palms and their resorts. I don't know what they do, because they've gone too far already. And at the same time, though, this stuff improves your soil health, improves your water use, and then, of course, it breaks down the biomass in your green waste piles, and it controls the mosquitoes. So this is an interesting guy on the right-hand side there, Tom Woods. He's with this company, the chitin company. For 20 years, he and his brother sprayed really heavy chemicals in Idaho, big-scale agriculture, stuff nobody else wanted to touch. They'd call them, they'd come spray that stuff for us. And then Tom started studying chitin and became a believer in it, and now all he sprays is the chitinase, or the chitin products. And he's a really good speaker. We're going to try to get him to come out here and speak, because he really can explain the process, and he has lots and lots of slides of success. And he's just a very interesting guy.
I do want to add, Shar, that it is OMRI listed for organic farming.
Yes, it's OMRI listed. It's already listed in Hawaii, thanks to Robin. And they've got products that are like killer for nematodes. They're all killer for nematodes, but this particular product is labeled for nematodes and certified in Hawaii. So we also are so fortunate to work with this man, Dr. Raul Cano. He was a microbiologist with the University of California his whole life. When he retired 15 years ago, he said, I want to give back to farmers. And so he started working on dried microbes for farming. And he puts, usually when you buy a microbe, you buy 1 or 2 strains. It's pretty expensive for 1 or 2 strains. He'll put at least 12 in there because of the biodiversity. So not that we're saying you shouldn't use the live soil microbes that we make, because we think they're better, but when you just need something dry off the shelf, it's always in the closet there. You can always go get it. It's there. And he is really anxious to work with us because he loves Hawaii. He loves to come here on vacation, so he'll do anything to work in Hawaii. He's now 80 years old. So we thank you, and the future thanks you for having an interest in regenerative agriculture.